Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka, and with me is Anita Anand, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. 9 states in India witnessing decline in COVID-19 cases, says government. Over 16 crore 50 lakh beneficiaries administered doses of COVID-19 vaccine in India so far. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Australian counterpart agree on need to ensure equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines and medicines. Japan extends state of emergency in Tokyo and 3 other areas until May the 31st. European Union backs US proposal to discuss waiving patent protections for COVID-19 vaccines. Germany rejects the idea. Indian rowers Arjun Jat and Arvind Singh qualify for the men's double sculls event at the Tokyo Olympics. And wrestler Sumit Malik also earns Olympic quota in men's 125 kg freestyle category. As the number of COVID cases are on the rise again, we appeal to our listeners not to lower the guard, follow all the precautions, and all those above 18 years to get vaccinated without any hesitation. Stay safe and protected by following these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. And now the news in detail. The Health and Family Welfare Ministry has said that 9 states and districts are witnessing a decline in the COVID-19 cases after registering a rise in the cases. However, the ministry expressed concern over the rise in the coronavirus cases in few states and union territories. Briefing media in New Delhi today, Additional Secretary in the Health Ministry, Aarti Ahuja, said that there are 12 states wherein active cases are above 1 lakh.
जहां पर 1 लाख से ज्यादा एक्टिव केसेस हैं वैसे 12 राज्य हैं, जहां 50,000 से 1 लाख के बीच के एक्टिव केसेस हैं वैसे 7 राज्य हैं, और जहां 50,000 से कम एक्टिव केसेस हैं वैसे 17 राज्य हैं. यदि हम राज्य देखें जहां पर की केस लोड ज्यादा है, वो राज्य हैं महाराष्ट्र, कर्नाटक, केरला, उत्तर प्रदेश, राजस्थान, आंध्र प्रदेश, गुजरात, तमिलनाडु, छत्तीसगढ़, वेस्ट बंगाल, हरियाणा और बिहार.
She said over 16 crore 50 lakh beneficiaries have been administered doses of COVID-19 vaccine in the country so far. Of this, over 13 crore 21 lakh have received the first dose, whereas 3 crore 29 lakh have received the second dose. She said 71 pressure swing absorption PSA plants have been installed out of the sanctioned 162 plants, and remaining plants will be installed by the end of June this year. She added that a total of 1,594 will be established across the country. Giving the details about the foreign aid, Ms. Ahuja said officials of different ministries and group of experts review the aid received from various countries on a daily basis. She asserted that received items are being processed on the priority basis to the various parts of the country. She added that over 11,000 items have already been dispatched across the country. Additional Secretary Dammu Ravi appreciated the efforts of foreign countries for providing the necessary support in this crisis situation. Terming the COVID-19 a global crisis, he stressed on the need for collective action and strategies. He assured that no confinement is pending at the airports. Principal Scientific Advisor K. Vijayaraghavan stressed on the need for taking the strong measures to avoid the third wave of the pandemic. He said it depends much on how effectively the guidance is implemented at the various levels.
The Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy have intensified their efforts to aid the civil administration in tackling the current COVID-19 situation by ferrying oxygen containers and medical equipment. The Defence Ministry said as on Friday, the C-17 aircraft of Indian Air Force have conducted 400 sorties from within the country, including 351 to airlift 252 oxygen tankers of a total capacity of 4,904 tons. The Air Force aircraft also conducted 59 international sorties to airlift 72 cryogenic oxygen storage containers of 1,233 tons. The containers and cylinders were procured from Singapore, Dubai, Bangkok, UK, Germany, Belgium and Australia. In addition, the C-17 and IL-76 aircraft have been tasked to airlift cryogenic oxygen containers, oxygen generators and ventilators from Israel and Singapore. The Navy has also deployed INS Indian Navy ships Talwar, Kolkata, Airawat, Kochi, Tawar, Trikant, Jalashwa and Shardul to ferry oxygen containers, cylinders, concentrators and related equipment from friendly foreign countries. The ministry said in the coming days, loading of oxygen containers and other medical supplies has also been planned on INS Tarkash, Shardul and Jalashwa from Doha, Kuwait and Muara in Brunei. Meanwhile, foreign countries are continuously providing medical equipment to India in its fight against COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of External Affairs today said shipments carrying 53 ventilators from Denmark and the second part of the oxygen generating plants from Germany reached India today. The ministry thanked the countries for providing these relief materials.
Now let's take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world. The European Union has backed the US proposal to discuss waiving patent protections for COVID-19 vaccines. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that Brussels was ready to discuss the US-backed proposal to waive patents on COVID-19 vaccines. She stressed that Europe's priority would be to boost global supplies, and the US proposal for waiver on intellectual property protection for covered vaccines could help achieve that objective. However, Germany, the EU's biggest economic power and home to a large pharmaceutical sector, rejected the idea, saying vaccine shortages were due to limited production capacity and quality standards rather than patent protection issues. While German Health Minister Jens Spahn said he shared Biden's goal of providing the whole world with vaccines. A statement issued by the German government reiterated that the protection of intellectual property is a source of innovation and must remain so in the future. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said on Thursday that vaccination needs to be ramped up across the globe if the world wants to beat mutations of the virus. He added that the United States was looking at ways it could help. Bangladesh recorded 37 deaths due to COVID-19 virus in the last 24 hours on Friday. This is the lowest death toll in a day since March the 29th, when 45 deaths were recorded in the country. During the same period, 1,682 new coronavirus infections were also reported in the country. Meanwhile, the government issued a fresh directive for the people to wear masks to control the spread of the coronavirus in the country. Malaysia's commercial capital Kuala Lumpur went into a 2-week lockdown on Friday as the number of daily cases increases considerably. The city will remain under lockdown until 20th of May. Japan has extended the state of emergency in Tokyo and 3 other areas until May the 31st, weeks before the Tokyo Olympics. The decision was taken owing the 4th wave of the virus as Tokyo and Osaka continue to record infections. The extension leaves a margin of less than 2 months before the game starts on 23rd of July. Meanwhile, as public concerns mount over holding the Tokyo Olympic Games amidst COVID-19 pandemic, an online campaign called Stop Tokyo Olympics has gathered almost 2 lakh signatures in the past 2 days. The games, which are due to open on July 23rd, have already been postponed for a year due to the coronavirus. Opinion polls in Japan have also found a majority of the public is opposed to the games. But organizers have repeatedly said the games will go ahead, unveiling detailed COVID-19 protocols for athletes and officials. Pfizer Incorporation and its German partner BioNTech SE on Thursday said that they had agreed to donate their vaccine to help inoculate those participating in the games. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
Welcome back to World News. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday spoke with his Australian counterpart Scott Morrison over the telephone. Mr. Modi conveyed his appreciation for the prompt and generous support extended by the government and people of Australia for India's fight against the second wave of COVID-19. The two leaders agreed on the need to ensure affordable and equitable access to vaccines and medicines for containing COVID-19 globally. The Prime Minister sought Australia's support for the initiative taken at the World Trade Organization by India and South Africa to seek a temporary waiver under TRIPS in this context. The leaders also took note of the progress made in the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership since the virtual summit held on the 4th of June last year and discussed ways to further strengthen cooperation and foster people-to-people ties. The leaders also discussed regional issues and reiterated the importance of working together for a rules-based international order and a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on how India's stand on a waiver of COVID vaccine patents at the WTO is gaining currency globally.
So today we are discussing the decision taken recently by the US and the Biden administration, which announced that it supports waiving intellectual property protection for COVID-19 vaccines as countries struggle to manufacture the life-saving doses. We've also seen that the European Union has stepped forward and said that they would support the US in this. Ambassador Sajanhar, when we see the COVID epidemic which is wrecking the world globally, and we see this decision by the United States which has also been hailed by WHO, how much of a booster is this for countries like India, for other countries which are struggling to contain this pandemic?
You would recall, Simran, that the whole issue was brought in front of the global community. It was taken to the World Trade Organization by South Africa and by India in October of 2020. Recall, by that time there were no vaccines that had come onto the scene. But it was expected that vaccines were around the corner, and that is why we had said that it is necessary, if we are to vaccinate, if we are to inoculate about 7.8 billion people of this world, then it should, the production, the manufacture, the distribution, the administering of vaccines has to be made freer and much more liberal. And that is when both India and South Africa had gone to the WTO asking for a temporary waiver of the intellectual property rights of COVID-19 vaccines and some other medicines and inputs. And you would see that it has taken 7 months or so just to get one agreement, one approval of a waiver from the United States. So I would say better late than never, but still, this is the first step, and it's a baby step. There is still a lot of work to be done. The matter has come in front of the WTO. On Thursday, the discussions are to start, and it could take a long time. But at least we have positive signals coming from the European Union. As you said very rightly, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, she has said that we are willing to discuss it. So, like President Biden, he has said that we are willing to support it. EU has not said that we are willing to support it. They said we are willing to discuss it in the WTO. And there are some countries, particularly Germany, which is the biggest economy in the European Union, which has said that we should not be going this way because it has a large number of pharmaceutical companies, and everyone should remember that these pharmaceutical companies are extremely powerful. They have huge clout. They have huge chests of resources, whether it is Merck or it is Roche or any of the others. They are German companies, and they will, I'm sure, try their very best either to deny or delay or to dilute whatever waiver or approval is provided by the WTO.
Mr. Sajanhar, as you pointed out, the reaction of the pharmaceutical companies. We've also seen that the stocks of major pharmaceutical companies that produced the vaccines, including Moderna and Pfizer, they dropped sharply after the US made the announcer of the potential waivers. We've also seen the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. They have expressed their opposition and their disappointment with the Biden administration. And we've also seen some people like Bill Gates have also come up and said that maybe this is not the way to go about it. This might in future also hamper innovation, the kind of innovation that we saw in the last year, a quick research testing to quickly come up with vaccines to deal with the COVID crisis. Do you feel that there is any strength to the argument being put forward by the pharma companies and by a few people like Gates?
You would recall that when discussions on the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, they were taken up at that time. It used to be the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in 1986. And that was the time that the pharma companies also, because they are very strong, they're very powerful, they're very influential, they had said that we cannot invest in innovation unless we get product patents the world over and unless we increase the duration of the patents to at least 20 years. You would recall at that time, India used to provide only process patents and we used to provide patents for 14 years. Anyway, as a result of those negotiations, it was decided when the WTO came into operation on the 1st of January 1995 that we would be granting product patents and they will be valid for 20 years. But when the world is faced with the once-in-a-century crisis of the nature of COVID-19, where we have seen that whether it is prosperous countries, whether it is rich or powerful countries, or it is poor, undeveloped countries, that it respects no one, then I think the profits should be put on the sidelines and saving lives should be the primary concern. Also, Simran, we need to remember that there cannot be any islands of safety, whether it is the United States or it is Germany or it is European Union. They cannot rest behind the argument that as long as we are vaccinated, we are safe. No, not at all. Because like it was happening in the United States last year, it is happening in the European Union, the United Kingdom. Even late last year, early this year, even now some of the countries in Europe are very seriously afflicted by this virus, like what India is going through. So there are going to be waves from one country to the other. Also, I think we need to remember is that no one is safe until everyone is safe. So if we want to protect ourselves behind shields of these vaccinations, that is not going to happen. So in self-interest itself, the countries need to recognize and need to ensure that even low-income countries, even poor-income countries are able to get vaccinations. The sad part of the story and the inequality is so glaring that so far more than 1 billion doses have been administered all over the world. Only 0.2% of them have been administered in low-income countries. Also, 53% of the doses that have been administered have been cornered by the richest 14% of the countries. So there is so much of disparity, so much of gap, so much of inequality that it is extremely glaring and it needs to be corrected. There are cases of countries like Canada, for instance. It is hoarding vaccines which are 5 times what are required to vaccinate its total population. Even as far as the United States is concerned, it has committed stocks, inventories of about 1.2 billion doses, while its population is just about 300 million. That means even if it were to give 2 doses to every person, it still has more than twice of what it really requires. So this sort of vaccine nationalism, when rich and prosperous countries are hoarding and not allowing even vaccines or the technology to go to, or even IPRs to be shared with developing countries, that does not bode very well for the world.
Ambassador Saxena, we've also seen that there's talk that now once the negotiations start at the World Trade Organization, the WTO, it's going to take a lot of time. It's not going to be easy, getting all the countries to agree, and then it will take a little while before this waiver happens. How do you see what is going to happen at the WTO, you think, going forward? India and South Africa is in one position. The US is committed to supporting them. We have, as you pointed out, the European Union still thinking about it. Germany coming out and saying that it is not in favor of this. So how do we expect the WTO talks, the negotiations, how do we see them going forward from today?
Simran, negotiated in the WTO for more than 5 years. So I know how slow and painstakingly, excruciatingly tiring this whole process is. So, of course, lawyers delight. But it is really takes a long time because you continue to negotiate the legal language of any waiver. And it is going to be, as it has been mentioned, it is going to be temporary. So, of course, I would like to applaud the leadership of the United States in having come to this decision against the views of its very powerful lobby. But I think President Joe Biden has taken this decision in the interest of global health and well-being. So I think he needs to be commended for that. He needs to be applauded for that. And if the United States were to put its full weight and full force behind it, as the U.S. Trade Representative has said that she is going to do, then I think it will be much quicker to shore up support from the European Union, because I think the United States provides leadership in these cases. So if the United States lets it be known that they are serious about it and they want things to happen quickly, and we might be able to get a temporary waiver. But otherwise, it is also feared that if it takes too long, then in any case, if it were to take by the end of the year or next year, then the companies, Pfizer, Moderna, all these companies would have already made their profits, would have already sold whatever they have to sell at higher prices, and they would be in a very comfortable position even when the waiver were to come through.
Mr. Sajjanha, there's another thing that has been written about ever since the United States made the decision, and that is something you also mentioned, that is about the vaccine diplomacy. And some people have said the vaccine diplomacy has also become a major part of the geopolitical competition between the US and China, and to some extent Russia with its Sputnik vaccine. And the US now coming up and saying that it supports the waiver, this move will severely undercut the Chinese efforts to spread its vaccine and hence its influence globally. How much credit do you give to this argument?
I think it has a lot of merit in this argument, because China has been using right from the start of this pandemic. In fact, even before the pandemic, it has been using the strategy of economic coercion. You would recall that last year it had started using what was known as the mask diplomacy. That means if countries were raising questions about the origin of the virus, then China would say that we are not going to supply you with masks, we are not going to supply you with test kits, we are not going to supply you with other essential medications. So it was trying to change the policies and the views of different governments through its coercion as far as the implements and the other provisions to deal with the virus are concerned. Now what it has started doing is it has said that individuals who are not vaccinated with the Chinese vaccines, they will not be allowed entry into China. And you know, China is a very significant economic player in the world. So there are very many people who visit China. But this is again a sort of blackmailing these people and forcing them to take on Chinese vaccines. But I think once this aspect comes through, once there is the waiver, and of course after the waiver, there are other challenges also. There are other hoops through which the world has to jump through. It is not only the technical aspect of waiver of the intellectual property rights, but it is also technology. And this is what India has stated, that even after the waivers are granted, we also need technology. There is also the need of setting up production facilities, setting up manufacturing facilities, because they don't come very easy, particularly as far as Pfizer, Moderna are concerned. Then there are also going to be the challenges of transportation, because if there are vaccines which need to be stored at very sub-zero temperatures, at cryogenic temperatures, then how do you store them? How do you transport them? Particularly when we are talking about developing countries, use of these vaccines by developing countries, then how do you go about it? So I think there are a large number of obstacles and challenges as we navigate the way from here to providing vaccines to all the people who need them around the world.
Do you feel that in a world that is so divided on so many issues, this move today to have a good global public health policy, and the first step is this waiver of IP rights on the vaccination?
Definitely, it is a good move for global public health policy. I think it is a good move for the US leadership, because this is what the United States has also been saying, that with the advent of President Joe Biden, it's going to be diplomacy is going to be back, American leadership is going to be back, alliances are going to be back. So I think from several aspects, this is a good move. But the United States should also, and the other countries like France and UK and others, which are supportive of this move, they should walk the talk. They should put their money where their mouth is.
With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the domestic stock markets, key indices post gains for the third straight day today, while the rupee appreciated sharply against the US dollar. In the international markets, global crude oil futures firmed up.
Two Indian rowers succeeded in confirming their berth for the Tokyo Olympics on Friday. Arjun Jat and Arvind Singh qualified for the men's double sculls event after finishing second at the Asia Oceania Continental Regatta event. Another Indian, Jakar Khan, finished fourth in the men's single sculls final, which offers 5 Olympic quotas, but he missed out as the country gets only one qualifying spot from this regatta. Arjun Lal and Arvind will be the only Indian rowers in Tokyo Games, which open on 23rd of July, as India will not participate in other Olympic qualifiers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In sailing, 4 Indians have already qualified for the Tokyo Games through the Musana Open Championship in Oman. Netra Kumanan became the first Indian female sailor to qualify for the Olympics after grabbing the first spot. Wrestler Sumit Malik has secured a Tokyo Olympics berth after reaching the final in the 125 kg freestyle category of the World Wrestling Qualifier at Sofia in Bulgaria. In the qualifier final, Sumit will fight with Russian wrestler Sergei Kozyriev for gold. The Board of Control for Cricket in India, BCCI, has announced the Indian squad for the upcoming ICC World Test Championship WTC final against New Zealand and 5-match Test series against England. Team India's first stop will be in Southampton, where they play New Zealand to decide the first champion of the Test format. India finished as the number 1 side with 72.2 percentage points after their 3-1 win against England at home. The win also booked their place in the final.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post reports that WHO is to decide Friday if Chinese vaccine Sinopharm will be granted emergency use authorization. New York Times reports that a federal grand jury indicted Derek Chauvin and 3 other former Minneapolis police officers on charges of violating George Floyd's civil rights. The Globe and Mail writes that world powers hold 4th round of high-level talks aimed at bringing US back into Iran nuclear deal. And The Guardian writes that under 40s in the UK to be offered alternative to AstraZeneca COVID vaccine. A quick look at the headlines once again. 9 states in India witnessing decline in COVID-19 cases, says government. Over 16 crore 50 lakh beneficiaries administered doses of COVID-19 vaccine in India so far. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Australian counterpart agree on need to ensure equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines and medicines. Japan extends state of emergency in Tokyo and 3 other areas until May the 31st. European Union backs US proposal to discuss waiving patent protections for COVID-19 vaccines. Germany rejects the idea. Indian rowers Arjun Jat and Arvind Singh qualify for the men's double sculls event at the Tokyo Olympics. And wrestler Sumit Malik also earns Olympic quota in men's 125 kg freestyle category. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnavajan, by artists from Kazakhstan. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.